Hello, family and friends. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Cody. We finished our high school journey last time. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Naval Academy Prep School. That was the journey that I took immediately out of high school. And boy, there's plenty of stories to tell there. Not really a whole lot of academics. I wasn't too... I'll tell you, once I left high school, there was a pretty rebellious stage within me, and it started off at the prep school. In order to get into the prep school, like I said, my mother got an appointment for me to the Naval Academy from Senator John Melcher. Before that, though, the reason that I got interested in the Naval Academy, when I was a junior in high school, sometime in the spring, I received a letter from Rick Forzano, who was the Navy football coach at the time. He ended up leaving that position and going on and coaching the Detroit Lions. Rick Forzano was his name, if you want to Google and check that out. But anyway, he sent me a letter that the Navy was interested in me and wondered if I would try and secure an appointment to the academy. And of course, my mother got all excited. My grandparents lived in San Diego, and there were quite a few sailors there that had retired, and they had visions of me being retired in San Diego. San Diego was one of the recruiting places for Navy personnel that were going into the Navy. That was your basic training. And then there was another one in the Great Lakes region. I don't remember specifically what the community was or the town that it was located in, but I know it was the Great Lakes. Well, in order for me to attend the Academy Prep School, and I went to the prep school because my scores in English were a little low on my ACT, and of course I couldn't do 2 pull-ups. I wasn't very strong in the upper body, but I could put up the rack on the Olympic machine with my legs, so I was real strong in the bottom part, but not so strong upper body. The requirement there was that you would enlist in the regular Navy, or you could enlist in the Marines and do a 1-year stint in the Marines and then apply for the prep school. I chose the Navy route. My dad was the former Navy man, as you know, from the Korean War. And I went ahead and enlisted sometime in August. I signed up as a regular Navy. One of the things that I knew going in was that I had 3 basic options. The first option was be in the regular Navy, go to the prep school. If I didn't graduate from there, I had 3 options basically. One was to finish out the 2-year term in the Navy and then do 4 years of reserve. My second option was to get out and be eligible for the draft. And at that time, I turned 18 the first month I was there at the prep school. And I could be eligible for the draft, but by that time they were pulling troops out of Vietnam, weren't needing the numbers that they needed before. And so I felt pretty secure in the fact that if I did get out and I did put myself out there for the draft, that probably the likelihood of going to Vietnam wouldn't be that great. So the other option then was their third option, and that was to go ahead and continue your time out in the 1-year prep school and move on to the Naval Academy in Annapolis. The prep school was located at an old training center from World War II, Bainbridge Training Center. And there was a section on the base where the prep school was located. And we were called NAPSTERs, Naval Academy Prep School individuals that were going to move on to the academy, or we were going to get out and be eligible for the draft, or we were going to finish out our time in the Navy and finish our reserve time. And so I didn't last the whole year. I made it as far as March, the end of March, and I did get out, and I was eligible for the draft. I did get drafted. My number was in the high 300s, so I really wasn't too worried about it at all. My first encounter, and really this was basically the longest time I'd ever been away from my family. Usually whenever we were traveling, I'd always been with family, at least a brother or a family member. Grandma got us on a couple of trips. Mom and Dad took us on a bunch. So I'd never really been alone, especially that far. I joined in Billings. I ended up grabbing an air flight in Billings to Denver, changed planes, and went to Baltimore. And in Baltimore, I landed probably, I want to say, 11 or 12 at night. And it was a bus ride on a military bus. If you were going into the military, you had this collection area where they had all the military personnel, and then they would load them up on buses and drop them off, because there were several bases along the way before I got to the prep school. I ended up getting to the prep school about 2 o'clock in the morning. And if you know anything about the military, they have reveille, morning reveille, and that morning reveille horn sounded at 5 o'clock. So I basically got 3 hours of sleep. I was assigned a barracks and a bed. That was going to be temporary because they were going to basically divide everybody up into companies and platoons and that sort of thing. And so we were waiting on that. Was awoke at 5 o'clock, so I got 3 hours of sleep. Not too many people knew one another. There were some from the east and maybe the south that had encountered one another from sports or something like that, but for the most part, we were all in the same boat. They rousted us out. We were out in our civilian clothes. We hadn't been given our military apparel yet. That was to come in the next couple of days. But anyway, they formed us up in a formation, and I just so happened to be one of the individuals selected as what they called a road guard. And basically what a road guard was is every time that the formation, when you were marching, would get to an intersection, whether it was on the right or the left, you would have a couple individuals run out and stop the traffic so that the formation could march by. And so that was one of my first duty in the Navy, was being a road guard the very first morning that I was there. And this was in the end of August. I want to say maybe the second, third week in August. But for us, our basic training was going to be right there on the base and in our facility area. They had a big parade ground. There was a big area with grass on it, like a big lawn. And anyway, we were out in the street in front of the barracks, and you'd had, there were two 4-story barracks. There was a basement, so you were in the basement or you were on the main level, or the next were two. So it was basically a 3-story with a basement. And we were all out in front and marching. Of course, we didn't know how to march yet. We were all trying to fudge our way through it, left, right, and the chief was out in front barking out the marching orders. My very first encounter with a military personnel at that base was the chief yelling at me, "Hey, fat boy, is that all the faster you can run?" Oh, right then I knew I was in for it. Wasn't going to have a fun time, but I ended up having some fun. Like I said, after high school, I entered a rebellious stage, and that was one of the first places that happened. So we continued on. We marched down to the chow hall. We ate our chow. And then from there, they took us right to the, it would have been the, I don't remember if it was the annex or, but anyway, they handed us out our clothes. We got dungarees and shoes and several different kinds of. You got a work dress boot, a work boot, and then you got some shiny shoes that were going to go with your uniform. And you had an all white uniform and an all would have been navy blue. And then you had several pairs of dungarees with some boxer shorts and some t-shirts. You were going to abandon your military clothes, that's for sure. The only time you got to wear them is when you got to leave base on leave on the weekends. So we went through the line and got our clothes. And by the way, those clothes weren't free. They would take them out of your paycheck. And that was one of the things about the prep school, is that while attending there, you got a stipend. And basically, you entered as a E1, which was the lowest rank. And so you got that pay, seaman recruit, they called us. E1s, I don't remember what the pay was, but you got a paycheck every 2 weeks. And of course, there was a bank on base. I discovered there was a non-commissioned officer bar where we did all our dancing and drinking. That was quite a treat. And then from getting our clothes, they marched us to the barbershop area, where they were probably 4 or 5 barbers deep, and we were all lined up. I knew I wasn't one of the first ones in line, but I was watching and pretty observant. One of the first things is you didn't ask him for a little off the sides, because that first cut was going right down the middle. And he ended up with the nicest, closest butch he ever had. So I just didn't say anything, because they do ask you how you want your hair, and I said, it's your call. And so they trimmed me up, lowered my ears a little bit, but I left me a little bit on top. And then from there, we went to the infirmary, where we formed 2 lines. The line on the right would get shots in their right arm. The line on their left would get shots in their left arm. And we would go, I think we ended up like 3 shots in that arm for that day. I don't remember what the type of shots they were giving you, but anyway, it was something standard in the military. And so from there, we marched back to, we had already eaten breakfast by this time. That was from the breakfast hall, we went to the clothing line and got our clothes. And then anyway, we marched from the breakfast hall back to our barracks and stowed our gear. And of course, we had to be changed into our dungarees. That was the dress for the day. They call that the dress for the day. And so the next time when we went out for lunch, fortunately, I was no longer a road guard and I didn't get yelled at anymore. But we marched, fresh haircut and all, to the chow hall for our lunch. And then we ended up, I don't remember what we did the rest of that day. But anyway, they got us to the supper hall. We ate our supper, and when we came back, they had us grab our gear, and we were rearranged according to companies and platoons. Now, there were 4 platoons to a company, and so you had the 2 buildings, and then there was a 3rd building, like a barracks, that was near the base portion that we were at, and that was the 3rd company. And basically, the guys that were in the 3rd company were your Marines that did 1 year in the regular Marines and entered the school because they were headed to the academy. And then I think some of the ones that had washed out or actually came from the regular Navy, and they were all assigned to that 3rd platoon. So they had a little bit more knowledge than we did as far as how the military worked. They were, I would say, veterans in that respect. But I ended up with 2nd Company, 2nd Platoon. So I was on the main floor of the 2nd building, so I had to move my stuff. We were in rooms of 4 in the first 2 barracks. I don't remember how the setup was for the 3rd barracks because I didn't go there. But anyway, on the main floor, I was the 2nd door on the left, and there was a couple of steps to go up. A desk when you walked in, that was the watch desk. Every company and platoon had to do a watch. So the watch basically, and it enrolled us as people that would check the barracks. You were in charge of your company and your barracks, and you would monitor and walk the halls and make sure everything was copacetic. And I ended up in a room with 3 roommates. There was a black kid by the name of Jim Thompson from Washington, D.C. There was a kid from Lehigh, Pennsylvania, James Lizer. And then the other roommate was from Annapolis itself, and his name was Doug Gill. Jim Lizer played soccer, and he also ran cross country. Doug Gill, basically, his sport was lacrosse. Lacrosse was big out east. And I was going to play football, but by that time I was drinking and smoking and didn't really feel like it. They didn't really come and force you to do that, but if you didn't participate in the sports that were going on at the time, then you had to do intramurals. And so my intramural would have been flag football in the fall. In the fall they had cross country and soccer. They played soccer and cross country. And so my roommate, one of my roommates was there on the soccer team. And then Jim Thompson and Doug Gill was in intramurals with me. And every day you would get up at revelry, you would march down to the chow hall in your formation by company, and then after that we would have a formation. I think it was around 7:30 or 8, and then we would march to the school area, and you had classes, and you got your class assignment and your class list. I was enrolled in calculus. There was an English class, a science class, a computer class, and I think the 5th class that we had was some kind of military history. We learned a little bit about the military. But anyway, you had 2 morning classes. No, you had 3. We had 3 morning classes. Then we'd march to the lunch chow hall, come back for our last 2 classes, and then that last period of the day would have been the sports period. You were either in intramurals or you participated in the fall in soccer or football. And so that was a basic routine every day. You got inspected in the morning. You were in formation. You were in the uniform of the day. Most cases it was dress whites, where you had to shine your shoes. You had a brass belt buckle that had to be shined. I remember using this compound called Brasso. You shined up You also had shoe polish that you shined up your shoes with, and a little buffer cloth. And then they also showed you how to make your bed. You had to do 4 corners, quite a little routine there. And then we all had storage lockers, and inside the storage locker you had to put all your gear neatly away. And the rooms got inspected, and so did you personally in the formation in the morning. So if you weren't squared away, it was easy to rack up what they called chits, and those were write-ups for breaking some sort of code. You'll learn awful quick that there's things that you got to do that you better do, and if you don't, they'll teach you how to do it. And so I was the recipient of several chits on different occasions. If you didn't get too many chits, I don't remember what the requirement was, but for every chit that you had an hour of extra duty. Now you could serve that if it wasn't too bad in the evenings, but through the course of the week, if you had, I think, 10 demerits with these chits, then you had to stay on base and you didn't get to go home or wherever people went on the weekends. We used to go Monday through Friday to school and participate in the activities, and then for the guys that were in intramurals and didn't have sports, you got to leave base if you didn't have too much extra duty. Well, I didn't leave base too often. One of the places that I did go, though, was for a family in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Now, the family had a son that was going to West Point, and he was a roommate of Terry Johnson. And Terry was Danny Johnson's older brother that graduated a year in front of us in '72. And he was at West Point. And those guys would come home on the weekends, and occasionally I'd get to see them if I wasn't in trouble. But how I would get there was you would grab a bus in your civilian clothes and ride the bus north to Philadelphia, and then I would grab a commuter train, and from Philadelphia I would go to Westchester, not Westchester, but King of Prussia. And so I would stay with that family for the weekend and then end up having to go back on Sunday, and it started all over again. A couple things about some of the chits that I ended up with. Not to mention that I didn't pass muster with my bed or my dress. One of the rules was that you had to salute an officer's car. And how you knew it was an officer's car is there was a decal on the bumper. And it just so happens that if you were got detention on the weekend, you were able to go to the club after you served your hours for that day. There were also people from the base that didn't have detention that basically had a free Saturday and Sunday, Friday night as well, and we would go to the club. And the club was like 50 cents a beer, maybe 75 cents a mixed drink. They used to serve pitchers of beer for about $1.50, so it was fairly inexpensive. Of course, you had money. You had money to burn because you got your paycheck. And I learned how to dance. I watched a lot of the black guys dance in, it would have been the music from the late 70s. Before that, the early 1970s, late 73 would have been things like Doobie Brothers, China Grove, I remember, was a big song, big time. Other ones for sure, but I spent quite a bit of time in the club because I didn't get to go home too often or get to go visit. One of the visits that I did take, though, was that Terry had a girlfriend that also lived in Westchester that was going to school, not Westchester, there I go again. They were going to school in Westchester at Westchester State College, in Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is out by Valley Forge. And so occasionally I would ride the bus, and there was a gal from Great Falls that was a good friend of hers. So I would go to King of Prussia, and if Terry and his roommate Bob weren't home on the weekend, because they would do similar things at the West Point Academy, they would either stay and do things locally, or maybe go sightseeing or something like that. But anyway, I would get with her. Her name was Lucy Biscotti, and she would take me, and we would go to Westchester and visit. I went there a couple times. The memory from there, it was about the same time that the movie Love Story came out. And I was in this room of, well, Terry and his roommate Bob were home that weekend, so they were there with us. And I was in a room full of girls from the dorms and all of these academy guys. Yeah, I'm one of the very few that are dropping tears throughout that movie. And those guys gave me a bunch of crap. The other memorable thing was we were staying in the dorm on the girls' wing, and they were in an area where the bathrooms were men's. So the girls were using the men's bathroom. Yeah, I was in there taking a leak, and this gal comes in and drops her drawers and starts peeing in the urinal. And that just about blew me away. I tell you, I was young and dumb then, that's for sure. Not dumb enough to get myself out of trouble. Quite a memory. So I got in trouble for not saluting that officer's car, by the way, and had to do some more chits. Another time was coming home from the club, staggering on the sidewalk, and it was probably about a half mile, maybe close to a mile, to get to base where we were at from the club. And so you pass by the football field, and one of these times, of course, they had shore patrol going throughout the facility, the base, and I I recognized that the poles had power switches on them. So I ended up getting on the football field and turning the power switches on the light standards, and I would go from one end to the other while the shore patrol would go and try to catch me. Well, I ended up getting caught. Again, that was more chit time. Demerits. By the time I left the prep school, after 8 months, and the prep school had a history of about 120 years or better, in the mid 1800s, early or late. But anyway, I had accumulated enough to be in the top 10 of the demerits for the prep school in its history. Another memory I have is that we one weekend we were supposed to clean the barracks, and whoever got the best barracks from the inspection was able to go home 4 hours early for Thanksgiving. So that was a big incentive. You could leave 4 hours early than the other companies and get a start on your Thanksgiving vacation and break. Well, we cleaned our barracks pretty slick, and I was coming out to make a call home, and I saw this kid in the phone booth, and he was from the other company, and he had come to sabotage us. He was going to do something to mess up the inspection for us. Well, we grabbed him and we took him into the showers and we stripped him. And run hot water over him. I burned him, I know we did. And he got kicked out the front door on the main floor, and he had to run down to his company barracks naked as the jaybird. And I think he ended up getting caught by the shore patrol that was cruising the base. That was a good time. Oh boy. But anyway, what we did was, there was a bunch of us, and I don't even remember who was with us, but it was from our company, from maybe several floors, some friends. They used to have tunnels underneath between the two company buildings, and it would go to the chow hall. Well, we went through the tunnels into the chow hall, and we ended up getting a 5-gallon container of chocolate milk. And we took that. It just so happens that our company was on watch that weekend, and so we had a guy stationed at their watch desk that particular evening, and we took that 5 gallons of chocolate milk in its container up to the top floor of the other platoons or the other company's barracks, and we slit that and had chocolate milk running all the way down their stairs, 2 floors anyway. And we ended up getting caught for that. So we lost, even though our building probably was much better off than theirs because of the chocolate milk. They held us out. I think what happened was that Company 3 ended up getting to go home early because they were in a separate area and they didn't mess with one another. They were a lot more mature than we were, I can tell you that much. So that was another adventure. Another time, when you had extra duty on the weekends, you either were sweeping, mopping, raking leaves, painting, or doing some sort of task like that. Well, anyway, I raked up this big old pile of leaves, and it was just about, this was Sunday night, because I had been working all day Sunday, raking up this big parade area of leaves from the trees, and I knew that the officer of the day was making his rounds, and I buried myself in there. I was in my dungarees, and I could hear him coming, and just about as soon as he got within 10 feet of me, I jumped up and scared the heaven living crap out of him, and I took off running. Now, our barracks, you could enter the basement floor through a door on the outside. Well, I did that, and of course I scooted my way up to the next floor, which was the main floor where my room was, and I got in there right away and told my roommates what I did and to be quiet, because that officer was on the run. He was going to find out who in the hell scared him. He never did. I sat down right away at my desk and acted like I was studying. It was Sunday night, so everybody was hitting the books, except for me. I was doing my extra duty. So that was a great fun time. A couple more things that I'll tell you before we close this out. Again, not so much about the academics, because it really wasn't on my priority list. That was my first exposure to calculus. That wasn't a whole lot of fun. It was a little bit tougher than the analytical geometry that I had in high school. But anyway, I went out for wrestling the second term, and I ended up at the heavyweight division wrestling against the state champion from California. And Lord knows he was quite a bit better than I was. And I wrestled him for, I suppose almost a month before I quit. And I didn't let the officers know that I quit. And I was supposed to go to intramurals, because if you weren't in the sport, and wrestling was on at the same time as basketball, so I quit the wrestling team. I did get a trip once to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I did get to wrestle one time for the Navy, the prep school. And I don't even remember if I won or lost, or but it didn't really matter. What mattered to me was that once again, the rebel that I was hiding out in my room during intramurals, and I got away with that for a couple of weeks before they discovered that I was no longer on the wrestling team and I should have been doing intramurals. So, yeah, we got a few demerits for that one too. And then, oh Lord, my dad did come out, like I mentioned earlier, for Family Day. It was a family weekend. I got to greet him, and we took a picture in front of a big anchor on base where we were at, in front of the building where the school was. That came into play later on because during football season, we were going to play the Military Academy Prep School. And they were in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which was south of D.C. I suppose it was maybe 2 hours from our base. And so we were going to go there and participate. And there was going to be soccer and football. And I think even the cross country was going to run, because I think the cross country was 2 seasons. But anyway, what happened was, one of the nights during the week, because it was like it was a week-long affair where you had a big pep rally, go Navy, beat Army, and all that stuff. Well, it just so happens that Army had snuck onto our base in our particular region and took that anchor and replaced it with a papier-mâché one that looked just like it. And it took maybe a day or two for us to find out about it. Well, we had to do something to get back at them. So what we did was, a bunch of us jumped into a pickup and headed down to Fort Belvoir, and we got on their football field with a can of gasoline, and we burned Go Navy and lit it on fire in the middle of their football field. So we burned their grass, and when it came time for the football game, it said Go Navy, even though they were trying to take care of it with some green paint, but you could still make it out. So just some of the highlights of that particular year. It was kind of a wasted year for me. Certainly disappointed my mom and grandma because I didn't continue on. But I just was not officer material. Was never going to be. I do have lots of memories from there. Met some great people. I did lose touch with my roommates, and eventually all of the people back there. I did at one time Facebook the Biscotti family and found Lucy's older brother John, who was a heck of a bowler in his day. But their dad was a trucker, and John ended up going into trucking. So that's the story from the prep school. It was a part of my life growing up and maturing. I was there. I went in at 17 in the service. 2 weeks probably after I joined and was at the prep school, I turned 18. So most of my 18th year was spent at the Naval Academy Prep School in Bainbridge, Maryland. And I went from the second week in August to the end of March. I was able to earn some GI Bill. I was still eligible for many of the veterans benefits. But the last thing I will tell you, when I was leaving, I was in a play production, Mr. Roberts. I had started, we were putting on this play, and I was one of the main characters. Well, I had gotten written up earlier, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that, before when I left, by one of the cadets that was like a company commander. He was making rounds at revelry time, and I was still sleeping. And that was an absolute no-no, because I got wrote up as sleeping in the rack after revelry. Well, the problem was that he put down the wrong time, because the time that he had on there, I had witnesses to say that I was in the cafeteria eating breakfast. And so I was going to take him to captain's mast for lying about me being in Iraq after after Reveille, which I was, but the chit that he wrote me up for had the wrong time on it. So it's like going to court and it gets tossed out because something's wrong with the paperwork. And so they tried to get me out of there in as big a hurry as they could. Usually it took you at least a week or two to muster out. Well, they got me out within a week's time, and so I left them high and dry on the play. They didn't have to take the pride and joy of their their commander to captain's mast, which was another treat. One last thing, not to mention that I got yelled at by the chief at the very beginning. One of the weeks before I left, I was watching the basketball team, and there's two things that you don't do. You don't chew gum, and you don't part your hair down the middle. Well, I was chewing gum in my uniform, watching the basketball game, and this Marine captain, his name was Captain Sink, bald head, smoked a long Cuban cigar, big one. He called me over, and of course I got rolled up again. And then the next day, because he told me he wanted to see me and he was going to have a little visit about chewing gum in uniform. Well, I had a little bit more hair on my top. I was able to, kind of camouflage it. Well, I had to part it down the middle. And I go in to see Captain Sink, and the very first thing he says to me, "Well, Jesus Christ, what do you think? You're the Great Gatsby or what?" Well, needless to say, I got in trouble for that one. Came back to the barracks, ended up hooking up with a good buddy of mine, Jerry Butler, and he gave me a mohawk. Again, that's an eccentric haircut. And so for the third time in about the last 48 hours, I got rolled up again. So that was pretty much how we ended our career. All kinds of fun. Well, it's been fun talking about that times. That'll be it for this episode. And next time I think we'll talk about my first go-around in Billings for school. I was at Eastern Montana College. I actually did 2 tours of duty there. No, we'll talk about Butte first, because when I came back from the academy, right after that, Mom had been trying to get me into on a football scholarship. She didn't want me hanging around. She wanted me to go back to school, so I ended up getting a football scholarship, a partial one anyway, for Montana Tech in Butte. So the next time we'll talk about the adventures there as well. And with that, this is Coffee with Cody signing out.